Hello, I'm Peter. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. Before we begin, I want you to imagine something. Imagine a cold so complete that your breath crystallizes before it leaves your lips. A darkness so total that the nearest neighbor's candle, just 50 paces away, becomes a distant star. Now, forget the twinkling village squares you've seen in holiday films. Forget the clean, well-lit reenactments of a standard medieval documentary. Forget the roasted chestnuts and the carolers in velvet cloaks. The medieval Christmas you think you know never existed. The truth lived in a world where winter wasn't a season, but a siege. Where survival meant more than skill. It meant something quieter, something we've almost forgotten. It meant the small act of sharing your last piece of salted pork, the silent decision to give up your spot by the fire, the steady hand that kept the flame alive through the longest night while others slept. Tonight, we're traveling back to a tiny village of 20 homes, perched at the very edge of the known world in the late 1300s. We'll spend the darkest weeks of the year there, from the first cold winds of Advent, through the 12 days of Christmas, and into the frozen return to ordinary life. This isn't a story about grand feasts in castle halls. This is about survival, wrapped in the thinnest layer of joy. About people who found warmth not despite the cold, but because of it. So before you settle in, if you're enjoying what we do here, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. But only if this kind of journey speaks to you. And down in the comments, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. It helps me remember that we're all taking shelter together, in our own way, across centuries and continents. Now, dim the lights if you can. Pull your blanket a little closer. Maybe let the room grow quiet around you. And let's drift back together through the cold and the dark to a December when Christmas meant something very different. When it meant, quite simply, that you had made it through another year. That you were still here, still breathing, still capable of kindness in a world that asked for everything and gave back so little. Let's begin. You wake to silence. Not the silence you know, the hum of electricity cut off, the absence of traffic. This is older, thicker. The kind of silence that settles into your bones when the world is buried under snow that fell through the night. It is a silence so heavy it feels like a physical weight on your chest, pressing down the layers of wool and straw. Beside you, the family dog, a scruffy, scarred creature named Wolf, a hopeful name for a gentle soul, lets out a long, shuddering sigh. He is pressed against your legs, his body a furnace, his smell of wet fur and earth a comforting anchor in the dark. He shifts, chasing some dream rabbit through a dream summer, and his twitching paws remind you that even in sleep, the struggle for life continues. You lie still for a moment on the straw mattress, feeling the cold air on your face, the only part of you not cocooned in rough wool blankets, and the warmth of your family pressed close on either side. The fire has nearly died. You can tell without opening your eyes. from the quality of cold that's crept into the house while you slept. In a medieval village home, the hearth never truly goes out during winter. To let it die completely is to lose hours of precious labour coaxing it back to life, striking sparks from flint and steel into a nest of dried moss and birch bark, until your fingers cramp and your eyes water from the smoke. But overnight, banked carefully with ash, it dwindles to a bed of red embers that pulse like a slow heartbeat in the darkness. This is December in a medieval village during the toughest medieval times. The kind of winter survival skill that every medieval peasant had to master just to wake up the next morning. In medieval life, the hearth was everything. It was the engine of existence. Maintaining it required a deep, intuitive understanding of fuel and airflow, a knowledge passed down not through books, but through the shivering nights of childhood. In the harsher winters of the late medieval times, often referred to by historians as the onset of the Little Ice Age, these winter survival skills became even more vital for the medieval peasant in every medieval village. The cold was not just a nuisance, it was a predator waiting at the door. You can feel the dread in the pit of your stomach, not a sharp fear, but a dull, aching reluctance to leave the warmth. Your body knows what awaits, the shock of the freezing air that will make your joints creak like old timber, the floor that will bite your soles. You look at your hands in the dim light. The knuckles are swollen with chilblains, red and itching, a map of the winter's cruelty etched onto your skin. This is the physical toll often missed in a standard medieval documentary. It's the constant, low-level pain of being alive in January. Someone will need to feed it soon. Someone always does. You hear your father shift, the straw crackling beneath him, then his breath, steady and deliberate, as he rises in the pre-dawn blackness. You don't need to see him to know the movements. Every morning of your life has begun this way. The careful extraction from the shared sleeping space, the shuffle of feet on the packed earth floor, cold even through the layer of rushes scattered there. You hear the soft, affectionate murmur he makes to the cow as he passes her stall, a greeting more tender than any he speaks to humans at this hour. She answers with a low, rumbled lowing, a sound that vibrates through the wattle walls. They are old allies, the man and the beast, bound together by the mutual need for warmth and milk and labour. The pause as he finds the woodpile by touch, selecting pieces by weight and feel. The soft chunk of oak being set onto coals. The patient wait, breathing softly as the wood catches and the light begins to grow. This is December in a medieval village, the 12th month, the dying month. The month when daylight shrinks to almost nothing and night becomes a physical presence, something you can almost touch. It is a time when the mind can easily turn dark, mirroring the sky. The shadow of melancholia, as the scholars call it, or just winter sadness as your grandmother knew it, sits in the corners of the room. You have to fight it with small things. The colour of the hollyberry, the taste of salt, the warmth of the dog's ear under your hand. Outside, the world is locked in what people are beginning to whisper might be a new kind of winter, longer and crueler than their grandparents remembered. Historians will later call this the Little Ice Age. But you don't have that language. You only know that the growing seasons are shorter now, that the harvests fail more often, that winter arrives earlier and lingers like an unwelcome guest who won't leave. Your village sits at the edge of everything. 20 homes, maybe 80 souls, scattered along a muddy track that leads, eventually, to a market town 2 days' walk away. In good weather. In December, with snow drifting hip-deep between the houses and ice making the forest paths treacherous, you might as well be on the moon. The forest presses close on 3 sides, dark and dense, pine and oak standing like the walls of a cathedral. The trees are ancient, silent watchers. To a medieval peasant, the forest is not just a resource. It is a realm of spirits and wolves, a place where the rules of the village do not apply. You respect it, you fear it, and you thank it for every branch that keeps your children from freezing. In summer, it's a source of firewood, mushrooms, the occasional deer if the Lord's huntsman is looking the other way. In winter, it's where the wind lives, howling through the branches, carrying the cold down from some northern place you've never seen and never will. But you're not thinking about geography right now. You're thinking about warmth. The fire has caught. You can hear it, the gentle pop and whisper of flames finding purchase on dry wood. The light grows, sending shadows dancing up the wattle and daub walls, those woven branches plastered with a mixture of clay, straw, and something you don't think about too closely. Animal dung, dried and mixed in, gives the walls their strength and seals the gaps against the wind. When the walls are damp, which is most of winter, they smell of earth and animals and something ancient, like the inside of a cave. It's not unpleasant. It's home. It's the smell of shelter. It is the scent of safety. It tells you that the barriers are holding, that the chaos of the blizzard is out there and the order of the family is in here. You rise slowly, feeling the cold shock of air against your skin as you leave the nest of shared warmth. Your breath makes clouds in the firelight. Across the single room, you can see the shapes of your mother and younger sister still curled together. And beyond them, separated by a low wattle partition, the dark bulk of the cow and the smaller forms of chickens roosting on a beam. In the deepest cold of winter, the animals live inside. Their breath and body heat add crucial warmth, and you can keep watch against foxes and thieves. The smell is powerful, rich with manure and damp straw and the warm, grassy scent of the cow's breath. But it's also the smell of wealth, of survival. These animals are the difference between making it through winter and not. Your father looks up as you approach the fire. His face in the firelight is carved with lines, weathered like old wood. He's 35, which makes him practically elderly by village standards. Most people don't make it this far. His beard is flecked with grey, and his eyes, though tired, hold a quiet resilience. He doesn't say, "I love you." Such words are luxuries for poets. But he moves aside to give you the warmer spot on the bench. He hands you a piece of warm bark to hold against your cheek. This gesture, small and silent, is the loudest declaration of love in medieval life. But he's here, and he gives you a small nod of acknowledgement as you crouch beside him, holding your hands out to the flames. For a moment, you both simply exist in the warmth's radius. This is the geography that matters in winter. Not the distance to the next village, but the distance from the fire. 6 feet away and you're shivering. 3 feet and you can feel your fingers again. 1 foot and your face grows hot while your back remains ice. Outside, the world is beginning to show itself. Through the gaps in the shutters, you can see the grey non-light of a winter dawn, that long, slow brightening that never quite becomes bright. December daylight in Northern Europe is a weak and watery thing, rationed out like precious grain. Sunrise comes late, around 8 o'clock. Sunset early, by 4. And even at midday, the sun hangs low and pale, giving light but little warmth. A candle flame trying to heat a cathedral. You can hear the village waking. The sound of a door scraping open. Someone coughing. The sound carrying clearly in the cold air. The complaint of a cow being milked. The sharp, rhythmic crack of someone splitting kindling. A dog barks in the distance, likely old Miller's hound, and your own dog, Wolf, lifts his head and gives a short, muted woof in reply. A connection across the snowdrifts. Each sound is a small miracle, a declaration that another household has made it through another night, that they still have wood to split, a cow to milk, that they're still here. This is the first thing you learn about medieval winter survival. It's not dramatic. There are no desperate struggles against wolves, no last-minute rescues from blizzards. The drama is quieter, more relentless. It's the daily negotiation with cold and hunger and darkness. It's the steady work of keeping the fire fed, the animals alive, the family warm enough to see another dawn. And it's the knowledge, unspoken but always present, that you cannot do this alone. That survival, here at the edge of the world, is a collective act. The smoke rising from every chimney, the shared work of bringing in wood, the unwritten law that no one turns away a neighbour asking for a burning coal to restart their fire. These things are what keep you alive. Not strength, not cleverness, but the simple, stubborn persistence of ordinary kindness. Your father adds another log to the fire, and sparks spiral upward into the smoky darkness of the rafters, where they disappear among the hanging bundles of herbs, the strips of dried fish, the precious smoked meat from the November slaughter. Up there in the roof space, the smoke is so thick you can barely see. But that smoke is working, curing the food, killing insects, waterproofing the thatch. Everything in this house serves multiple purposes. Nothing is wasted. Not heat, not smoke, not even breath, which you breathe into your cupped hands before beginning the day's work. This is the world we're entering. A place where winter isn't a backdrop, but a presence, as real and demanding as any person. Where Christmas, still weeks away, already looms as both promise and test. Can we make it? Will the food last? Will the wood hold out? Will we see spring? But that's ahead of us. Right now, in this moment, there is only this. The fire newly fed, the family stirring, the smoke rising, the day beginning. The first small victory in a season of small victories. You're here. You're warm. You have this moment of peace before the work begins. And outside, beyond your walls, the village is coming to life in the snow. Each household performing this same quiet miracle. This act of continuing. 20 homes, 80 souls. All of you bound together by the simple fact that you are still here. Still breathing. Still hoping for the feast that will come if you can just hold on a little longer. The cold outside is absolute. But in here, by this fire, with your father's steady presence beside you and the promise of porridge warming in the pot, there is something that feels, for now, like enough. You are standing in the doorway of your home, and you are learning to see it as a stranger would. As someone from another time, another world, might see it if they stumbled through the snow and into your life. You might see dirt, but I want you to see the dignity. Look at the way the tools are hung with care, the way the floor is swept clean despite the endless mud. This is not a hovel of despair. It is a fortress of order, built by people who refuse to let the chaos of nature win. The first thing that strikes you is how small it is. One room, maybe 15 feet by 20. Low ceiling, barely tall enough for a man to stand upright at the center, sloping down toward the walls where the roof meets the ground. If you're tall, you learn to walk hunched, to navigate by instinct, avoiding the smoke-blackened beams that could crack your skull if you forget and stand too quickly. But small means easier to heat. Every dimension here is a calculation of survival. The wattle and daub walls, 18 inches thick, are packed with clay and straw and dung, materials that cost nothing but labour. They breathe, these walls. When rain soaks them, they darken and swell. When frost comes, they harden. You can feel the cold seeping through them on the worst nights. But they're better than nothing. Better than the bark shelters your great-grandparents might have known. The roof is thatched with rye straw, laid thick as a man's arm, bound and woven in overlapping rows that shed rain and snow and keep the wind at bay. Good thatch, properly maintained, lasts 30 years. Bad thatch leaks, grows mouldy, becomes home to rats and birds. You can hear the sparrows rustling in the straw above, a whole ecosystem living in your ceiling. Sometimes, in the quiet of the afternoon, you watch a spider weaving a web near the vent, admiring her persistence. She is a survivor too, a tiny architect of medieval life, catching the flies that the warmth wakes up. Your father rethatches every few years, choosing dry days in autumn, working with neighbours in the old way, everyone helping everyone, because next year it might be your roof and you'll need their hands. The floor is earth, not bare dirt, but compacted, hardened by generations of feet, mixed with clay and ox blood, then covered with rushes and herbs. Meadowsweet, tansy, lavender when you can get it. The herbs are crushed underfoot as you walk, releasing small puffs of scent that mix with the smoke and the animal smell and the human smell of too many bodies in too small a space. The floor is never quite clean. How could it be? You track in mud, snow, manure from the animals. You scatter bones from meals which the dog crunches in the corner. You sweep when you can, but mostly you just add fresh rushes on top, layering like the years, like memory. The hearth sits at the centre of everything, not against a wall like in the manor house, but right in the middle of the room. A circle of stones containing the fire that contains your life. The smoke rises and spreads and fills the upper half of the room before finding its way out through a hole in the roof. A louver you can open wider or close tight depending on the wind and rain. The smoke doesn't bother you anymore. You were born into it. Your eyes adjusted years ago. But visitors cough and weep. And you remember your grandmother saying that city folk, when they came through, always looked at the smoke like it was trying to kill them. Maybe it is, slowly. But the grandmother also said the smoke carries prayers up to God. She would sit by this fire, her hands gnarled like oak roots, telling stories of winters past, of wolves that spoke like men, and of the time the Virgin Mary herself supposedly walked through the village disguised as a beggar. These stories are part of the house's insulation, layering the walls with myth and meaning. Around the fire, the geography of daily existence arranges itself. The cooking pot, a precious thing of iron, hangs from a chain that can be raised or lowered depending on the heat you need. Right now it holds water, slowly warming, waiting for the oats that will become breakfast. Beside the hearth, stacked with careful precision, is the wood pile. Oak for long burning, ash for quick heat, pine for kindling, though it spits and pops. You know wood the way others know letters. The weight of it, the smell of it, the way different woods burn. This knowledge isn't taught in schools. It's absorbed, like the smoke, until it lives in your muscles and hands. To the left of the door, the sleeping area. Not a bed as future centuries would know it, but a raised platform of wooden planks covered with straw mattresses, lumpy with age and use, topped with whatever blankets and furs the family has managed to accumulate. In winter, everyone sleeps together. Your parents, you, your sister, sometimes your grandmother before she died last spring. Body heat matters more than privacy. Modesty is a luxury you can't afford. At night, you burrow into this mass of warmth, and the cold that would kill you becomes just an abstract pressure against the walls, something outside, something survived for another night. You learn the map of your family's bodies, the sharp angle of a knee, the soft curve of a shoulder. In this closeness, conflicts must be resolved quickly. You cannot go to sleep angry when you must sleep in the arms of the person you are angry with. It forces a kind of peace, a necessary forgiveness. To the right, the animals. The wattle partition isn't much, just enough to keep the cow from wandering over to the fire. She stands there now, a patient brown presence, her breath steaming, her eyes dark and calm. Her name is something like Brownie, though you'd never tell anyone outside the family. Names are for things you love, and admitting love for an animal that might need to be sold or slaughtered is to invite heartbreak. But she's Brownie to you, has been since she was a calf and you were small enough to sleep curled against her flank on the coldest nights. Sometimes, when the world feels too hard, you press your forehead against her warm, rough neck. She stands still, chewing, smelling of sweet hay and patience, and her solid, uncomplaining presence calms your racing heart. She is the anchor of the household, a silent therapist in a world without medicine for the mind. Above her, chickens roost on a beam.
3 hens and a scrawny rooster who crows at odd hours, not just dawn, but sometimes midnight, sometimes noon, as if he's forgotten the rules or is inventing new ones. The chickens are gold in winter, giving eggs where nothing else gives anything. Their feathers plucked carefully when they molt to stuff a pillow or patch a coat. They scatter at your approach, muttering and fussing, and you scatter grain for them, watching them peck and jostle and live their small, fierce lives. This is the sum of your family's wealth. The cow, the chickens, the cooking pot, the tools hung on pegs along the wall. A scythe for harvest, a digging spade, its handle worn smooth. A wooden rake. Your father's knife, which he sharpens every few days and uses for everything from cutting bread to field surgery on animals. That knife handle is dark with the oil of his palms, polished by years of grip. It is an extension of his will. Your mother's spindle and distaff, the tool she uses to turn raw wool into thread, are sitting in the corner, never quite finished, never quite put away. The work of medieval life is endless. There is no time when you are done. But there are moments when you pause. When you look around this small, smoky, animal-centered space and feel something that might be pride. This is what you have built against the winter. These walls, this fire, this life. It isn't much. A stranger from a future time would see poverty, would pity you, would count all the things you don't have. But you would count differently. You would count the fire that didn't go out, the cow that made it through last winter and might make it through this one, the chickens that are still laying, the roof that isn't leaking yet, the family that is still whole. You would count the small miracle that you are here, in this moment, not yet hungry, not yet cold, with wood on the fire and the thin winter sunlight starting to angle through the gaps in the shutters. You would count the sound of your mother humming as she stirs the pot, a melody that has no name, that she learned from her mother, who learned it from hers, passed down like the iron pot, like the knowledge of herbs, like the understanding that survival is work, and work is love made visible. And if you could speak across the centuries, you might say this: don't pity me, the smallness of my home. Pity instead anyone who has so much space they forget what it means to be close. To sleep in the warmth of those you love, to share breath and heat and the first light of morning, to know every sound in the night, every creak of timber, every sigh of wind as intimately as you know your own heartbeat. This house is not a castle, but on a December morning, with the snow piled against the door and the forest wind howling and the long, hungry months still ahead, it is castle enough. It is warm enough. It is home enough. And that, you are learning, is the first principle of medieval winter survival. Not to have everything, but to know the difference between enough and more than enough. To understand that wealth, real wealth, might be as simple as waking up warm, as revolutionary as making it through the night. Your mother ladles porridge into wooden bowls. It's thin, mostly water and oats with a scraping of salt, but it's hot, and it fills your belly, and it's yours. You eat slowly, letting each spoonful warm you from the inside, feeling the cold retreat a little further. Your father eats in silence, already thinking about the day's work. Your sister blows on her portion, her cheeks pink in the firelight, her hair tangled from sleep. This is the morning. This is the beginning. And if the day brings hard work and cold hands and the usual sorrows of December, it also brings this moment, this warmth, this table such as it is, this family. In a medieval village, this is everything. This is the whole world. And it has to be enough, because it's all you have, all anyone has. And Christmas is coming. And before joy, there must be endurance. And before the feast, there is this: the ordinary morning, the simple meal, the fire that still burns, the life that continues, one day at a time, one small act of persistence after another.
The light is dying. It happens slowly, then suddenly. The way medieval winter always takes you by surprise, even when you've lived through 30 of them. One moment it's afternoon, the pale sun hanging low over the forest like a cold eye. The next, shadows are pooling in the hollows between houses, and the temperature is dropping so fast you can feel it in your teeth. This is the time of day you learn to fear most. Not the deep night, when everyone is locked inside and the fire is built up, and you're surrounded by the warm breath of family and animals. But this, the transition, the gathering dark, the hour when the cold really begins its work. You're outside, finishing the day's tasks. There's always something to do before nightfall in the medieval village in December. Animals to check, wood to bring in, the privy to visit one last time before you're sealed in for the night. You work quickly, your breath coming in clouds, your fingers already numb inside their wool wrappings. Tonight, like every night in this medieval village, you're practicing the most essential winter survival skill: understanding the physics of warmth in medieval times, when heat was a precious resource for the medieval peasant. It involves an intricate sensory awareness. You notice the smell of damp wool and animal breath, the unmistakable scent of medieval life in winter, thickening in the air as the humidity rises with the chill. You learn that stillness is the enemy. To stop moving is to invite the frost into your marrow. The physics of cold in the 14th century are personal and immediate in a way that's hard to explain to someone who's never lived without central heating. Heat isn't something that exists everywhere, a constant you can take for granted. It's a rare thing, a precious thing, something you create and defend and lose and have to create again. Heat is the fire. Everything else is cold's territory. Right now, standing in the village lane, you are losing heat from every surface of your body. Your head, uncovered because your wool cap is drying by the fire after yesterday's snow. Your hands, because no gloves exist,
that actually keep your fingers warm when you're working. Your feet, wet inside their leather shoes from a day of moving through slush. Your chest, despite 3 layers of wool and linen, because the wind is finding every gap in your clothing, every seam and fold. You understand things about cold that modernity has forgotten. That there are different kinds of cold, each with its own quality, its own danger. There's the dry cold of clear nights, when frost forms like white fur on every surface, and your breath hangs in the air like a ghost. That cold is easier to bear. You can wrap up against it, keep moving, stay ahead of it.
Then there's wet cold, when snow melts and refreezes, when your clothes become damp and the dampness conducts heat away from your skin faster than you can generate it. That's the cold that kills, quietly, stealing your warmth so gradually you don't notice until you can't feel your feet anymore, until you're stupid with it, until you sit down in the snow and think you'll just rest for a moment. And then there's the cold of wind. The wind that comes off the North Sea, they say, though no one here has ever seen the sea. The wind that blows down from Scotland, from Norway, from some place beyond geography where winter lives all year and breeds these gusts that arrive like wolves, sudden and vicious, cutting through wool like it's nothing, making you gasp and turn your back and fight for every breath. Tonight, the wind is rising. You can hear it in the forest, a low roar building in the darkness between the trees. The village responds instinctively, the way a body tenses before a blow. Shutters slam closed, doors scrape shut. Someone shouts a warning, and you see old Thomas from the end cottage chasing his last chicken, the stupid bird having escaped at the worst possible moment. Thomas cursing and lunging and finally catching it in a flurry of feathers and indignation. You hurry to your own door, your arms loaded with wood. This is the nightly ritual, the calculation that must be perfect. Too little wood, and you'll be waking at midnight to feed the fire, stumbling in the dark, wasting precious warmth. Too much, and you're carrying extra weight, straining muscles you'll need tomorrow. You've learned to judge it by feel, by weight, by the memory of 1,000 other nights. This much oak, this much ash, these pieces of pine for the morning when you'll need quick heat. Inside, the house is already transforming into its night self. Your mother has hung a heavy cloth across the doorframe, an extra barrier against drafts. The shutters are closed and barred. The fire has been built up, a carefully constructed stack of logs that will burn slowly through the night, giving steady heat without needing constant attention. The animals are settled, the cow chewing her cud with rhythmic patience, the chickens already drowsy on their roost. And now comes the physics lesson that every medieval peasant learns in their body, even if they never put it into words. The lesson about how heat moves, how cold moves, how a house becomes a system as complex and delicate as a living thing. Heat rises. You know this from watching smoke, watching the way it climbs toward the roof. The warmest air in your house is up there, under the thatch, where it does you no good unless you're a chicken. Down here, where you live and sleep and breathe, the air is cooler, stratified in invisible layers. Ankle height is coldest. The packed earth floor radiates cold like the fire radiates heat. Waist height is better,
Chest height, better still. This is why you sleep on a raised platform, why you crouch by the fire rather than sit on the ground. But heat also moves outward, seeking cold the way water seeks downhill. Through the walls, despite the thick daub. Through the roof, despite the thatch. Through the door, despite the cloth. Through the shutters, despite being barred. Your house is not sealed. It can't be. You need air, need the smoke to escape, need some flow, or you'd suffocate in the night. So heat is always leaving, and you are always making more. And the balance between these two forces is the difference between survival and death. Your family gathers around the fire. This is the hour when the day's work is finally done, when there's nothing more you can do until morning. You sit on rough benches, on the edge of the sleeping platform, on the floor with your back against the warm stones of the hearth. The cat, a fierce mouser with half an ear missing, emerges from the shadows to curl up on your father's knee. Even this wild thing, who spends her days killing in the barn, seeks the communion of the fire. Your father's rough hand strokes her fur, a rare moment of gentleness from a man whose life requires hardness. Your father whittles a new handle for a tool, his knife scraping in the quiet. Your mother spins, the wool transforming into thread with a steady rhythm that's almost hypnotic. Your sister plays some small game with pebbles, making patterns on the ground, erasing them, making new ones. The fire provides more than heat. It provides light, though not much. Firelight is red and yellow and dancing, creating shadows that jump and shift. It makes faces look ancient one moment, young the next. It hides as much as it reveals. In a medieval peasant home, night means near darkness. You can see the fire itself clearly. You can see a few feet around it dimly. Beyond that, the house dissolves into blackness. The cow is a shadow. The far wall is gone. The roof might as well not exist. You live in a small sphere of light, and beyond it is the unknown. This changes how you think, how you dream. The darkness becomes peopled with presences. Not ghosts exactly, though you believe in those, but simpler things. The sense that the house extends further than you can see, that there are corners and spaces where anything might hide, that the wind outside isn't just wind, but something almost conscious, something that wants in, that's testing your walls and roof and door, looking for weakness. Your grandmother, before she died, used to say that winter darkness was full of old spirits, the ones who lived here before the church came, before Christ pushed them back into the forests and mounds. She said they came close to fires on cold nights, drawn by warmth and memory, not to harm, but to remember what it was to be warm. She called them the cold walkers, and she would leave a small crust of bread on the windowsill for them. "Hunger makes monsters of us all," she would say. Even the dead. You look at the windowsill now. The crust is gone, taken by a bird, a rat, or something else. The mystery keeps the world feeling large and alive, filled with unseen neighbours. Your mother would hush her, afraid such talk would anger the priest. But you listened, and you believed, and sometimes, on nights like this, you feel it. that sense of ancient watching, of something outside the circle of Christian light, something that knows winters your church has never seen. But that's philosophy, and philosophy doesn't keep you warm. What keeps you warm is work. The work of burning wood. The work of keeping the fire fed, the smoke channeled, the heat distributed. You take a turn, adding a log, pushing coals together with a stick, closing the gaps where air can steal heat. Your father speaks, his voice quiet in the firelight. He's teaching you something he learned from his father, who learned it from his. How to read wood. How to know what's dry enough to burn clean, and what will smoke and hiss and steal heat trying to boil away water. How oak burns slow and steady, good for overnight. How ash burns hot and fast, good for cooking. How pine is quick heat but dangerous, spitting sparks that can catch thatch if you're not careful. How birch bark is the best kindling, how it burns even when wet, how you should always keep some tucked up in the rafters for emergencies. This is the education of a medieval peasant. Not reading or writing or numbers, but wood, weather, animals. The 100 small skills that mean the difference between making it and not making it. You absorb it without trying, the way you absorb the smoke, until it's part of you, until you can't imagine not knowing it. Outside, the wind hits, really hits, a gust that makes the whole house shudder, that finds every gap and whistles through it, that sends a puff of smoke back down through the roof hole into the room. Everyone looks up, instinctively checking the roof, the walls, the door. But everything holds. Your father built well. The house creaks like a ship in a storm, but it holds. This is winter in a medieval village. This is survival as practiced at the edge of the world. Not dramatic, not heroic. Just this. A family gathered around a fire, doing the small work of persistence, keeping warm enough, keeping fed enough, keeping the darkness and cold at bay for another night. The work of staying alive when the world wants you dead. And yet, in this moment, there's something else, something you can't quite name. Maybe it's the firelight on your sister's face as she looks up from her game to smile at you. Maybe it's the sound of your mother's spinning wheel, that steady creak and whir that means work being done, thread being made, the future being woven from raw wool and patient hands. Maybe it's just the simple fact of warmth after a day of cold, of stillness after movement, of together after the long hours of separate labour. Maybe it's the knowledge, unspoken but shared, that you are not alone in this, that every house in the village is doing this same work right now, that somewhere the reeve is banking his fire, the blacksmith is checking his forge, the widow at the edge of the village is saying her prayers and hoping her wood lasts, that you are all bound together by the simple fact of winter, by the shared work of survival, by the understanding that what saves you saves all of you, and what takes one of you diminishes everyone. The fire crackles. A log shifts, sending up a small fountain of sparks. You watch them rise and fade, little lives burning out in the smoke. You're warm, Your belly has food in it. Your family is around you. Tomorrow will bring more cold, more work, more challenges. But tomorrow is tomorrow. Right now, in this moment, by this fire, you have enough. And that's the secret of medieval winter survival that the stories never tell. It's not about being strong enough, or brave enough, or clever enough. It's about being stubborn enough to keep going, patient enough to do the small work every day without fail, and humble enough to accept that enough is enough. That survival doesn't look like triumph. It looks like this: a smoky room, a small fire, a family that's still together, still warm, still here. The night deepens. The cold presses against your walls. But inside, for now, you hold the line. You keep the fire burning. You keep each other warm. And that's all you can do. That's all anyone has ever done through all the long winters, all the dark nights, all the way back to the first fire and the first family that gathered around it and decided to stay alive for one more day. Night in December is not like night in summer. This is obvious, but the depth of the difference is something you only understand by living it. In summer, night is a brief inconvenience, a few hours of darkness bookended by long, lingering twilights. In December, night is a country you travel through, vast and foreign and full of its own rules. The darkness begins around 4 in the afternoon and doesn't fully release its grip until 8 the next morning. 16 hours. 2/3 of your life in winter happens in darkness. And this changes you in ways that are hard to explain to someone who's never known it. It changes how you think, how you dream, how you understand time itself. You are lying on the sleeping platform, tucked between your sister and the wall, wrapped in wool and waiting for sleep. The fire has been banked for the night, just a bed of coals giving off a faint red glow, enough to take the worst edge off the cold, but not enough to light the room. Everything is shadows and the suggestion of shapes. You can hear more than you can see. Your father's breathing, already deep and steady. He falls asleep fast, the sleep of someone who's worked hard all day and will work hard again tomorrow. Your mother beside him, restless still, her mind not yet ready to let go of the day's worries. The inventory she's always running in her head. Do we have enough oats? Is the cow's cough getting worse? Should we have saved more apples? The mathematics of winter, the constant calculation of enough. Your sister against your back, small and warm, already asleep, her breathing the soft rhythm of childhood. The animals shifting in their space, the cow's occasional huff and stomp. The chickens silent on their roost, little balls of feathers in the dark. And outside, the wind, always the wind, pressing against the walls, testing the roof, howling in the forest. But there are other sounds too. Sounds that pull at the edge of your awareness, that keep you from sliding into sleep. A creak from the rafters as the cold makes the timbers contract. A skitter in the thatch that might be a mouse or might be something else. And voices, distant and distorted, from other houses in the village.
someone coughing, a baby crying, the muffled sound of an argument, words you can't make out, but the anger clear enough. Sound travels far on cold nights, carries across the snow, bounces off frozen ground, reaches you through walls that are porous with gaps and cracks. You know your neighbour's sounds as well as your own. You know who snores, who wakes to piss in the night, who prays out loud. There is no privacy in a medieval village. The walls are too thin, the spaces too small, the lives too intertwined. What happens in one house is known in all houses. Sickness, birth, death, celebration, grief. All of it audible, all of it shared. This should bother you, but it doesn't. But at night, time becomes strange, elastic. Sometimes a minute feels like an hour, especially if you're cold or need to piss but don't want to brave the privy. Sometimes hours pass in what feels like moments, lost to sleep, or the half-sleep of winter nights when you're never quite warm enough to fully relax, never quite cold enough to be forced awake. You find yourself staring into the darkness, your mind replaying the harvest, the faces of those lost to the pox, the smile of a girl in the next village. The darkness acts like a mirror, reflecting your deepest fears and your most fragile hopes. In a medieval documentary, they show the actions. They rarely show this, the long, introspective cinema of the peasant mind. You drift, you surface, you drift again, and in the morning you're not sure if you slept at all or if you've been awake the whole time in some other state that has no name. The Church divides night into canonical hours, the times of monastic prayer, vespers at sunset, compline before bed, matins in the deep middle of the night, lauds at dawn. But you're not a monk, you don't have a clock. You mark night differently, by the feeling of the cold, which deepens as the hours pass and the fire dies, by the quality of your hunger, which changes from the sharp pang of evening to the dull gnaw of morning, by your bladder's pressure, which eventually forces you up no matter how much you want to stay in the warm nest of blankets, and by dreams. The dreams that come in medieval darkness are vivid and strange, in ways that future centuries will try to explain with psychology and REM sleep and neurons firing. But you don't have that language. You have only the experience. The way dreams blend with waking thought. The way you can be in your house and in a forest and in a place that never existed all at the same time. The way the people in your dreams are familiar but changed, speaking in voices that are theirs but not theirs, telling you things you need to know but can't quite remember when you wake. Your grandmother used to say that dreams were messages from God, from the dead, from the saints or the old spirits, or your own soul trying to speak to your waking mind. She said you should pay attention to dreams in winter, when the veil between worlds was thin, when darkness and cold pushed you closer to the other side. She taught you to remember them, to tell them in the morning, to look for patterns and warnings. You dream now. Not fully asleep, not quite awake, but in that space between. You dream of summer, of green fields and warm sun, and the dream is so vivid that for a moment
you forget where you are, forget that winter exists. And then you surface, feeling the cold air on your face, and the loss is so sharp it's almost painful. Summer is a memory. Winter is real. And there are months before the green comes back. You shift, trying to find a position that's more comfortable, and your sister murmurs in her sleep, her hand finding yours under the blanket. This is something she has done since she was tiny, reaching for your hand in the dark. You hold it, her small fingers in yours, and feel a wave of something you don't have words for. Protectiveness, yes. Love, yes. But also something bigger. The sense that this simple touch, this connection in the darkness, is what keeps you human. What keeps you from being just an animal surviving and makes you a person living. Your mother used to tell a story, one her mother told her, about a winter long ago, worse than any winter in living memory. Snow so deep it buried the houses, cold so fierce that the fire couldn't fight it, that people froze in their beds despite the flames. And in that winter, the story went, the only people who survived were the ones who held on to each other. Literally held on, arms linked, hands clasped, bodies pressed together, sharing warmth and breath and the will to keep living. The ones who let go, who tried to survive alone, froze and died. The ones who held on made it through. You don't know if the story is true. Maybe it's just a story. But it feels true. It feels like something you understand in your bones, in the way you sleep pressed against your sister, in the way the whole family clusters around the fire, in the way the village itself is just 80 people holding on together, refusing to let go, refusing to freeze, refusing to die. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog barks, short, sharp, alert. Then silence. Then another bark from a different direction. The village dogs talking to each other, or warning about something. A fox, probably, slinking through the snow, looking for an unwary chicken. Or maybe nothing. Maybe just dogs being dogs, breaking the silence because silence is too heavy, too complete. You wonder what it would be like to live somewhere with no seasons. Somewhere always warm, always light. You've heard stories of such places. Lands to the south where snow never falls. Where oranges grow on trees and you can sleep outside under stars. It sounds like paradise. It sounds like a lie. You can't imagine it. You can't imagine a life without winter, without this annual test, this proving ground. What would you be without winter to survive? What would any of this mean? Maybe nothing. Maybe that's the point. Maybe winter isn't something to overcome, but something to accept, to move through, to let shape you into the person you need to be. Maybe the cold outside makes the warmth inside matter more. Maybe the darkness makes you value every scrap of light, every moment by the fire, every morning you wake up and you're still here, still breathing, still alive. This is the psychology of medieval winter nights. This is what happens when darkness isn't an absence, but a presence. When night isn't just when you sleep, but where you live half your life. It makes you different, quieter, more interior, more attuned to small things, small comforts, small connections. The touch of a hand, the sound of familiar breathing, the faint glow of banked coals promising that fire still exists, that warmth is possible, that morning will come. You close your eyes. You let the dark take you. You drift into sleep, real sleep now. Your body finally warm enough. Your mind finally still enough. And as you go, your last thought is this: you survived today. You'll survive tonight. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. And again. And again. Until the days start getting longer. Until the cold starts loosening its grip. Until Christmas comes and goes, and winter begins finally to die. Until spring. But that's later. That's tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. Right now, there is only this: the dark, the cold, the warmth of your sister's hand, the sound of your family sleeping, the village dreaming around you, the fire breathing slowly in its bed of ash, the night unfolding hour by hour by hour, and you at the center of it all, holding on. Something shifts in the village around the middle of December. It's subtle at first, hard to name, but unmistakable once you notice it. The quality of the dark changes. Not lighter, not yet. The winter solstice is still days away. But different, expectant, as if the darkness itself knows that something is coming, some turn in the wheel, some reason to endure. Christmas is 3 weeks away, and the village begins to prepare. This preparation is not like the Christmas you might imagine from later centuries. There are no shops to visit, no presents to wrap, no cards to write. The preparation is more fundamental. It's about survival first, celebration second. Or maybe they're the same thing. Maybe survival at this time and place is celebration enough. The work begins in the forest. You're there with your father and a group of men from the village, standing in the pre-dawn grey, your breath hanging in clouds, the snow crunching under your feet. There is a camaraderie here that only exists among men who share a burden. No words are needed. A grunt, a gesture, a shared look when a hawk dives. It is a language of presence. You watch your father's back, the way he moves with an efficiency born of decades of labour. And you realise you are learning not just how to chop wood, but how to be a man in medieval times. How to carry weight without buckling. You're looking for the Yule log, and this is not a casual task. The Yule log must be oak, the biggest piece you can find and drag back, and it must be chosen with care because it carries the household's luck for the year ahead. Your father walks among the fallen timber, testing pieces with his foot, his eye, his hand. Too small, too rotten, too green. He's looking for the piece that feels right, that speaks to him in some way you don't yet understand, but will, someday,
when you have your own household and your own fire to tend. Finally, he stops, points, nods. This one.
It takes 6 men to move it. You loop ropes around it, thick hemp that bites into your shoulders, and you pull. The log resists, wants to stay where it is, but inch by inch you drag it through the snow, back toward the village. It's brutal work. Your muscles burn, your hands cramp, your breath comes in gasps. But there's something else too, something almost joyful. You're doing this together, you and the other men and boys, and the log is so heavy that no one could move it alone. And there's pride in that, in the shared work, in the understanding that some things can only be accomplished by many hands pulling the same direction. The log arrives in the village like a parade, and people come out to watch despite the cold. The children especially, running alongside, shouting, their excitement infectious. This is the first real sign that Christmas is coming. The Yule log. The promise of light and heat and a break in the relentless grind of winter survival. But there's more work to do.
While the men have been in the forest, the women have been in the houses, beginning the great cleaning. And when I say cleaning, I don't mean tidying, I mean war. Medieval peasant houses accumulate months of soot, smoke stains, old rushes gone sour, droppings from animals, the general grime of human existence in a small space. Before Christmas, this must be dealt with. Your mother is a general directing the campaign. The old rushes are swept out, taking with them months of tracked-in mud, food scraps, God knows what else. The hearthstones are scrubbed with sand and water, the ashes hauled out to be saved for soap making later. The walls, where they can be reached, are wiped down with wet cloths that come away black. The sleeping platform is emptied and restuffed with fresh straw, a luxury saved for special occasions. Even the animals get attention. The cow brushed until her coat shines, the chickens checked for mites. This cleaning is practical, yes, but it's also ritual. You're making space. You're clearing out the old year's dirt, the old year's bad luck, making room for something new, something better. The work is hard and endless and never quite done, but there's a satisfaction in it. In seeing the house transformed, in watching the hearthstones go from black to grey, in smelling the fresh straw instead of the old, sour smell. And then the decoration begins. And this is where survival and celebration truly merge. You go to the forest again, but this time you're looking for specific things. Holly with its red berries, bright as blood against the snow. Ivy, dark green and trailing, symbol of eternal life. Mistletoe, if you can find it, rare and precious, growing high in the oak trees where the Druids once harvested it with golden sickles. Or so the old stories say. You don't have a golden sickle, just a knife and your father's steady hand as he climbs the tree. And you hold your breath, because a fall from that height in winter could break bones or worse. These rituals, passed down through generations in medieval life, were more than tradition. They were practical winter survival skills that brought hope to every medieval peasant
in the medieval village. The holly and ivy were not just decor. They were psychological armor. In the dead of winter, bringing evergreens indoors was a defiant act, a way of proving that life could withstand the freeze. It reminded the medieval peasant that green would return, that the sun would strengthen, and that the long, dark tunnel of winter had an end. These plants are not decoration in the modern sense. They're magic. Or they're close enough that the difference doesn't matter. In a world where everything is bare and dead, where the trees are skeletal and the ground is frozen, these plants are still green,
Still alive. They've survived when nothing else has. They prove that life continues, that winter doesn't win, that spring will come. Bringing them into your house is bringing that promise inside. You're telling winter, you haven't beaten us. Look, here's green. Here's life. Here's hope. The holly goes over the door, both inside and out. Protection against evil spirits, against bad luck, against the malevolent things that wander in winter darkness. The berries are poison, you know this. Your mother has warned you 1,000 times. But they're also beautiful. The brightest colour you'll see until spring. The ivy winds around the roof beams, transforming the smoky interior into something that feels, briefly, like a bower, like the inside of summer. And the mistletoe, if you found any, hangs in the place of honour, above the fire. This is the plant that grows without touching earth, that lives between earth and sky, between the worlds. It's powerful, dangerous maybe, but also blessed. A kiss under mistletoe is more than just a kiss. It's a promise. It's luck. It's the old magic acknowledging the new magic of Christ, but never quite bowing to it, never quite admitting defeat. The Church doesn't exactly approve of all this. The priest, Father Benedict, a thin man with cold hands and a colder voice, has preached more than once about pagan practices, about the danger of mixing Christian holy days with heathen customs. But he preaches in Latin, and most people don't understand Latin, and even those who do know that some traditions are older than churches, deeper than sermons, and you don't throw them away just because a priest frowns. You don't throw away what works. And this works. The green boughs, the holly, the ivy, they make people smile. They make the houses feel less like prisons and more like homes. And if God disapproves, well, he hasn't said so directly, not to you. And until he does, you'll keep bringing in the green. There's food to prepare too. Not the feast itself, that's still days away, but the preparations for the feast. This is where the November slaughter pays off. The salted pork has been hanging in the rafters, curing in the smoke, and now it's time to check it, to make sure it's not spoiling, to calculate how much you can spare for Christmas and how much you need to ration for the months ahead. Your mother makes these calculations with a precision that would impress any accountant. She knows to the ounce what she has. 5 pounds of salted pork, 3 pounds of dried fish, a precious ½ pound of cheese, hard as stone,
but still good. A cup of honey saved from summer. Oats, barley, a little wheat if you're lucky. Root vegetables in the cold storage pit outside. Parsnips and turnips and carrots, shriveled now but edible. Dried peas, dried beans. Herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters, sage and thyme and rosemary, their scent mingling with the smoke. This is wealth.
This is what you've worked all year to accumulate. And now you have to decide how much to spend on Christmas. Because Christmas is a feast day, a holy day, a day when you're supposed to eat well, to celebrate, to give thanks. But Christmas is also just one day, and there are 90 more days of winter after it. And if you eat too well at Christmas, you might starve in February. So your mother calculates. A portion of pork for Christmas Day, some of the dried fish for Christmas Eve, a few of the least shriveled turnips, some of the good barley for bread, if there's enough. The honey, definitely the honey, because Christmas without sweetness is just another cold day. She makes these decisions with the gravity they deserve, and you understand, watching her, that this is power. This is what it means to run a medieval household. To be the one who decides whether the family eats well today or survives tomorrow. To balance joy against prudence, celebration against survival. And through all of this, through the cleaning and the gathering and the planning, there runs a current of something you can only call hope, or maybe anticipation. The village is changing. People are talking more, smiling more, stopping to chat in the lane despite the cold. The children are wild with excitement, barely containable, counting down the days. Even the reeve, usually sour as old milk, seems lighter, quicker to laugh, slower to scold. This is what Christmas does in a medieval village. It gives you something to hold on to, a marker, a moment, a promise that this cold, this hunger, this darkness is not forever. That there will be a break, that for one day, maybe two, maybe even the full 12 days if you're lucky, you will eat well and work less and be warm and be together and remember what it means to be more than just surviving, to be living, to be human, to be part of something larger than yourself. The village is building something together, you realize, not just fires or feasts, but a structure made of shared anticipation, shared work, shared hope. The architecture of Christmas in a medieval village is not about buildings or decorations. It's about this: people connecting, helping, preparing together. It's about knowing that when the Yule log burns, it burns in every house. That when the holly hangs, it hangs in every door. That when you feast, you all feast. And when you pray, you all pray. And when you make it through to January, you make it through together. You're standing outside your house at dusk, looking down the village lane. Smoke rises from every chimney, 20 thin columns reaching toward a sky going purple with cold. Each column is a household, a family, a small fire fighting the dark.
And together, seen from above, they would look like a constellation, like stars, like proof that even at the edge of the world, even in the darkest, coldest part of winter, people are here. People are living. People are hoping. Christmas is coming. You can feel it in the village's heartbeat, in the quickened pace of preparation, in the green boughs over every door. You can feel it in yourself, in the way your chest lifts when you think about the feast, about the games, about the 12 days when work stops and life, for a brief, shining moment, is something other than endurance. It's not here yet. There are still hard days ahead, cold nights, hungry mornings. There's still work to do, wood to cut, animals to tend. There's still the daily grind of medieval survival, the relentless pressure of winter at the edge of the world. But it's coming. Christmas is coming. And that promise, that simple promise, is enough to keep you going. Enough to make you smile as you turn and go back inside, back to your family, back to your fire, back to the work of staying alive and staying human and staying hopeful. Because hope, you're learning, is not a luxury in a medieval winter. It's not something extra, something soft, something you can do without. Hope is survival. Hope is the reason you chop wood when your hands are numb, the reason you ration food when your stomach is empty, the reason you get up in the dark and cold, morning after morning after morning. Hope is the architecture you build when there's nothing left to build with, the invisible structure that holds you up when everything else has fallen away. And Christmas, in this time and place, is hope made visible, made real, made something you can touch and taste and gather around. So you prepare, you clean and gather and plan, you bring in the green, you dig the great log from the forest, you count your food and make your calculations. You do the work of hope. And you wait, with the patience that medieval winter teaches, for the light to return. The snow has stopped falling. The sky is clear for the first time in days. And this means two things. One, you can finally see the stars, a vast, glittering river of light stretching across the black dome of night. And two, it's going to be brutally cold. But tonight, you don't care about the cold, because tonight is Christmas Eve, and everything is about to change. The day has been strange, suspended, almost dreamlike. No work in the fields, obviously, they're frozen solid. But also no regular work around the house. No spinning, no carving, no mending. Just the final preparations for tonight. The house has been scrubbed until it gleams. The animals have been fed and bedded down with extra straw. The fire has been built up to a roar, the Yule log placed at its heart, heavy and solid and perfect. And everyone has stopped to watch it catch, to see the flames begin their work, to feel the heat building. And now it's evening, and you're dressed in your best clothes. Your best is not much. A tunic that's cleaner than usual, patched at the elbows, but the patches are neat. Leggings that almost fit, handed down from your father, rolled at the waist. Your feet wrapped in new wool bindings, a Christmas gift from your mother's hands, though she won't call it that, won't draw attention to the hours of work they represent. But you know, you see the care in the weave, the tightness of the stitches, and you feel something warm bloom in your chest that has nothing to do with the fire. The whole village is stirring. You can hear it through the walls, through the cold air. Doors opening, voices calling, the sound of many feet crunching through snow. Everyone moving in the same direction, toward the church. Your family joins the procession. Your father walks ahead, your mother beside him, you and your sister following. Other families merge from other paths, and suddenly you're part of a river of people, all flowing toward the small wooden church that sits at the village centre like a hen on eggs, protective and patient and worn. The church is tiny. Stone floor, wooden walls, a thatched roof like the houses, only steeper. But tonight, it's transformed. Candles everywhere, more candles than you've ever seen, their flames multiplying in the darkness until the whole space seems to glow. Someone, probably the priest's housekeeper, has hung holly and ivy around the altar, and the green looks so bright against the dark wood it almost hurts to look at. The smell is extraordinary. Pine smoke from the censers, sweet and resinous. Wax from the candles, clean and pure. Unwashed bodies packed together, 80 people in a space meant for maybe half that. But instead of being unpleasant, it's comforting. The smell of your people, your village, everyone here and alive and together. Cold wool, damp leather, the faint metallic tang of snow melting on warm skin. And underneath it all, something you can't name, something old. The smell of stone that's been prayed over for generations, of wood that's absorbed 1,000 voices, of sanctity itself, maybe, or just of human hope concentrated in one small space. You find a spot near the back, standing because there are no pews, just packed earth floor and pressed bodies, and the candles floating above like small suns. The priest enters, Father Benedict, and tonight even he looks different, softer somehow. His vestments are finer than usual, embroidered by hands more skilled than any in the village, gifts from the Lord's wife probably, and they catch the candlelight and throw it back in gold and red. He raises his arms and the church falls silent, and then he begins to chant. You don't understand Latin, most people don't, but you don't need to understand the words to feel what's happening. The chant is ancient, repetitive, hypnotic. It winds around you, through you, binding everyone together in its rhythm. Your breath falls into sync with it, your heartbeat. And suddenly, you're not just you anymore. You're part of something larger, part of this collective body, this temporary we that exists only in moments like this. The Mass proceeds through its ancient forms, the prayers, the responses that you know by sound if not by meaning. The consecration, when the priest raises the host and the bell rings and everyone bows and you feel that electric moment of the holy breaking through into the ordinary. And then, finally, communion. The moment when you shuffle forward in line, when the priest places the thin wafer on your tongue, when you taste the flat, dry, nothing flavour of it, and somehow that nothing becomes everything, becomes the literal body of Christ, becomes salvation made physical and small enough to swallow. This is what Christmas Eve means in a medieval village. This moment, this mystery, the understanding, never questioned, always felt, that tonight something impossible happens. That God, the infinite God who made stars and mountains and oceans, becomes small enough to fit in a woman's womb, vulnerable enough to be born in a stable, human enough to feel cold and hunger and fear. And if God can do that, can make himself small enough to save you, then maybe you can survive this winter. Maybe the cold and dark and hunger are not the end. Maybe there's always a way through if you just hold on. The Mass ends. The priest gives the final blessing, and then everyone files out into the night, into air so cold it snatches your breath, into a darkness lit by 1,000,000 stars, and the village transforms again, because now comes the feast. Your house is warm with bodies and firelight and the smell of cooking. Your mother has been preparing for days in secret, hoarding ingredients, planning the menu like a military campaign. And now she presents it, and it's more than you dared hope. There's pork, real pork, not the tiny salty scraps of everyday meals, but actual pieces of meat, from the shoulder, tender and fatty and rich. Your father carved it earlier, slicing it thin to make it go further, and your mother has stewed it with onions and turnips and herbs until it falls apart at the touch of a spoon. There's bread, real wheat bread, white and soft, so different from the dark, heavy barley bread of every day that it tastes like cake. There's cheese, just a little, hard and sharp and precious. And there's frumenty, a dish of wheat berries boiled with milk and spices, sweetened with the honey your mother had been saving, warm and creamy and tasting of cinnamon and saffron if you can afford it, or just sweet spices if you can't. And there's ale, not the thin small beer of daily life, but Christmas ale, brewed strong in November, left to mature, brought out now for this night only. It's dark and rich and warming, and after one cup you feel it spreading through your limbs, making your fingers tingle, making the room seem even brighter and warmer than it is. The family eats together, sitting around the fire, bowls balanced on knees, sharing the good wooden spoons that only come out for special occasions. Your father says grace, a long one tonight, thanking God for survival, for food, for family, for the Christ child born tonight in Bethlehem, so far away, and yet somehow here, in this smoky house, at this rough table. And then you eat, and it's glorious. Not because the food is fancy, it's not by the standards of the Lord's table or even a merchant's house, this is plain fare. But because you're hungry, because it's been weeks since you ate this well, because every bite is a victory against winter, against hunger, against the long dark that wanted to starve you. You eat slowly, savouring each spoonful, making it last, knowing that tomorrow will bring cold and work again. But tonight you feast. Your sister's eyes are huge, reflecting firelight, and there's grease on her chin, and she's smiling so wide it looks like it hurts. Your mother keeps making sure everyone has enough, keeps refilling bowls, keeps pouring ale. And you see the way she barely eats, the way she's watching all of you instead. And you understand with a sudden clarity that this is what she wanted. Not the food for herself, but the joy on your faces. The knowledge that she made this happen, that her planning and scraping and calculating brought this moment into being. Your father raises his cup and everyone follows. To Christmas, he says. To family. To the good Lord who keeps us. And everyone drinks, and the ale is warm in your throat. And you feel something that might be happiness, or might just be being full and warm and with people you love. But whatever it is, it's precious, it's rare, it's worth remembering. Outside, you can hear the village, other families feasting, laughter spilling out into the night. Someone singing, the words indistinct but the tune joyful. Something about holly and ivy and the birth of the king. And you realize that this is the moment the whole village has been working toward. This simultaneous celebration. 80 people in 20 houses, all feasting at the same time, all marking the same holy night, all connected by bells and starlight and the shared understanding that they made it. They survived. They're here. Later, much later, when the food is gone and the ale is mostly gone, and the fire has settled into its steady rhythm, your father begins to tell a story. It's a Christmas story, one his father told him, about a poor shepherd who had nothing to give the Christ child but his warmth, who lay down in the stable and let the infant sleep against his chest, and how that gift of warmth, freely given, was worth more than all the gold the wise men brought. It's a simple story, maybe not even true, probably not in any historical sense, but true in the way that matters, true in its heart. And as your father tells it, his voice quiet in the firelight, you understand why this story survives, why it's passed down. Because it says that what you have is enough, that warmth given freely is wealth, that the small kindnesses matter, maybe matter most of all. Your sister has fallen asleep against your mother's shoulder, milk drunk and food drunk and happiness drunk. The chickens are silent on their roost. The cow chews peacefully in her corner, her eyes half closed, content. And you sit there in the firelight, in the warmth, in the presence of your family, and you think about survival and what it means. It's not just staying alive, not just enduring. It's these moments, this food shared, this warmth shared, this story told in the quietness of Christmas night. It's the ability to celebrate, to feast, to mark the holy days, to remember that you're more than just a body that needs feeding and warming. You're a soul. You're human. And even here, even at the edge of the world, even in the coldest, darkest, hungriest time, you can still find reasons to give thanks. The Yule log burns steady, its great bulk ensuring it will last all 12 days if tended properly. The candles gutter low. The night deepens. And you realize, half asleep now yourself, that this is what Christmas is for people like you. It's not magic. It's not a miracle, not in the flashy sense. It's just this: a moment of relief, a pause in the struggle, a night when hunger is answered, when cold is beaten back, when family is together and safe and warm. It's a sacrament in the truest sense. Not just the host at Mass, but this bread, this meat, this cup shared around the fire. The sacred made physical, hope made edible, love made visible in a mother's careful rationing, in a father's story, in a sister's sleepy smile. Outside, the stars blaze in the frozen sky. Inside, the fire burns, and between them, cradled in this small space of warmth and light, your family rests, content, together, alive. Tomorrow will bring the 12 days, the games and feasting and reversal of order that mark the season. But that's tomorrow. Tonight is tonight. Christmas Eve, the feast. The moment when, for just a little while, survival becomes celebration, and celebration becomes something very close to joy. You close your eyes. You feel the warmth. You hear your family breathing. And you give thanks, wordlessly, for this. For warmth. For food. For the simple, profound gift of another Christmas. Another year survived. Another moment of peace in a world that asks so much and gives back so little. The fire crackles, the night holds, and Christmas has come to the edge of the world. There's a law, unwritten but absolute, that governs the 12 days of Christmas in a medieval village. From December 25th to January 6th, normal work ceases. The wheel stops spinning, the plough stays silent. The fields, frozen and snow-covered, will wait. And in this pause, this sacred interval, the village transforms into something strange and wonderful and temporary. You wake on Christmas morning to a world that feels different. Not physically, it's still cold, still dark, still December. But the weight has lifted. The relentless pressure of survival has eased just for now, and in its place is something you might call permission. Permission to rest, to play, to be something other than a worker, a survivor, a person bent under the burden of staying alive. Your father is still in bed. This is unprecedented. Your father, who wakes before dawn every day of the year, who rises even when he's sick, even when his bones ache with cold and damp. But this morning he's lying there, eyes open, just resting. And when he sees you looking, he smiles, actually smiles. "No work today," he says. "Church rule, Lord's rule. Even the reeve can't complain." And it's true. The Church has declared these days holy, and even the Lord, whose power over peasants is normally absolute, respects the sanctity of Christmas. To make a man work during the 12 days would be sacrilege. So everyone rests. Or rather, everyone stops the regular work. Because rest, you quickly discover, doesn't mean sitting still. It means different work, better work. The work of being human instead of just surviving. The games begin almost immediately. Children pour out of houses like water from a broken dam, shrieking with joy, throwing snowballs, sliding on the frozen pond at the edge of the village. But the adults play too.
By midday, a group of men has organised a wrestling match in the village square, and everyone gathers to watch, stamping feet to stay warm, passing a jug of ale that makes its rounds until everyone's had a pull. The wrestlers are stripped to the waist despite the cold, their breath steaming, their skin reddening as they grapple. Thomas the blacksmith against young John from the mill. They're evenly matched, both strong, both stubborn, and the match goes on for what feels like hours, neither able to pin the other, until finally Thomas gets a grip, twists, and John goes down in a spray of snow, and everyone cheers and groans depending on who they bet on. Betting. That's the other thing about the 12 days. Gambling, normally frowned upon by church and Lord, is tolerated now. Not for money, most people don't have money, but for small stakes. A cup of ale, a piece of cheese, a favour to be repaid later. Men gather in corners playing dice, the carved bone cubes clattering in the cold. And there's an edge of danger to it, of transgression, that makes it sweeter than it would be otherwise. But the real transformation happens on the 3rd day, when the Lord of Misrule is chosen. This is tradition so old nobody remembers its origin. Some say it came from Roman times, from the feast of Saturnalia, when slaves became masters for a day. Some say it's older, darker, from the time before Christ, when the year turned and chaos was necessary to reset the order. But whatever its source, it's here now, and it's about to turn your village upside down. The selection happens in the village square. Everyone gathers, even the reeve, even the priest, looking uncomfortable. Someone, usually the oldest man in the village, draws names from a bag. This year, it's Martin, a farmer's son, 17 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, who never expected to be chosen. But his name comes out, and everyone roars. And suddenly he's being lifted onto shoulders, a crown of straw and holly placed on his head, a ragged cloak thrown around his shoulders. "All hail the Lord of Misrule!" someone shouts, and everyone takes up the cry. And Martin, who yesterday had to bow to the reeve, who had to step aside for his betters, who occupied the lowest rung of village hierarchy, is suddenly king. And for the next 3 days, his word is law. Ridiculous law, playful law, but law nonetheless. He decrees that everyone must walk backwards for an hour. He declares that the reeve must sing a song about chickens. He orders the priest to tell a joke, a clean one, but still, and the priest, grimacing, complies, and his joke is terrible. But everyone laughs because the priest telling a joke is itself the joke. He commands feasts, games, dancers, and everyone must obey. And the whole point is inversion, reversal, the world turned wrong way up to remind everyone that order
is temporary, that hierarchy is just agreement, that the low can be high and the high can be low, and maybe, just maybe, the difference between them isn't as fixed as everyone pretends. The women have their own traditions. On St. Distaff's Day, the day they're supposed to return to spinning, they instead stage a revolt. You watch your mother and the other village women gather, whispering, planning, and then, suddenly, they're attacking the men with buckets of water, drenching anyone foolish enough to come near the well. The men retaliate by trying to set fire to the flax on the distaffs, and it turns into a mock war, everyone laughing, everyone soaked and cold and exhilarated, the battle continuing until someone calls a truce and both sides retreat to dry off by their fires. This is what the 12 days give you. Not just rest, but this. Inversion. Play. The temporary suspension of the rules that normally govern your life. And it matters. It matters more than you can easily explain. Because for 50 weeks a year, you're at the bottom. You're the one who bows, who obeys, who does the hard work while others benefit. But for these 12 days, anything is possible. Even a gap-toothed farmer's son can be king. Even women can wage war. Even the priest can be mocked without consequence. It's a release valve. It's a way of surviving not just winter, but the entire social structure that presses down on you. Because if you never had these moments, if you never got to invert the order, to play at being something else, the pressure would build until something broke. But with the 12 days, the pressure escapes in laughter, in games, in the temporary madness of misrule. And underneath it all, binding it together, is food. The feasting continues, not as lavish as Christmas Eve, but steady, generous. Every household shares what it has. You visit neighbours carrying a loaf of bread as a gift, receiving in turn a cup of ale or a piece of cheese. The doors that are normally barred at nightfall stay open. People move between houses, telling stories, singing, sharing warmth. The singing. You hadn't expected how much singing there would be. Carols, but not the refined carols of later centuries. These are rough, repetitive, half-pagan things that mix Christian themes with older symbols. Holly and ivy personified, competing for dominance. The boar's head brought in with ceremony. Strange verses about lords and ladies that might be about nobles, or might be about something else, some older power that refuses to be fully forgotten. You learn a new carol, talked by an old woman whose name you don't know, but whose voice is surprisingly strong. It's about shepherds, about cold nights, about watching over flocks while the world sleeps. And as you sing it, surrounded by your village, your people, you understand what these songs are for. Their memory, their continuity. They're the way knowledge survives when nothing is written down. These melodies have been sung for centuries, will be sung for centuries more, carrying stories and meaning, and the simple fact of survival through the dark. On Twelfth Night Eve, there's a feast at the Lord's Hall, and for once, the peasants are invited. Not to sit at the high table, of course, but to fill the hall, to eat at the lower tables, to share in the Lord's plenty. It's obligation as much as generosity. The Lord must be seen to be generous at Christmas, must play his role in the social theatre. But you don't care about the politics. You care about the food, the warmth, the sheer spectacle of the hall lit by rushlights, the high table gleaming with silver, the music from travelling minstrels who've come for the season. You see people you rarely see.
The Lord himself, distant on his dais, looking old and tired, but playing his part. His lady, elegant in wool-dyed colours you've never seen on anyone in the village. The Lord's children, probably near your age, but from another world entirely, dressed in clothes that cost more than your family earns in a year. And you feel no envy, strangely. Or rather, you feel it, but it's distant, abstract. Their world and yours barely touch. They're players in a different story. What matters is this: you're full, you're warm, you're with your people. And for these 12 days, life has been good. Not easy, not even comfortable by modern standards, but good in the way that matters. Good in the sense that you've had enough to eat, enough warmth, enough laughter, enough rest. Good in the sense that you've been reminded that you're human, that you're part of something, that survival isn't everything. The 12 days are ending. Tomorrow, Epiphany, and then the day after, back to work. Back to the wheel and the plough, and the endless labour of staying alive. But not yet. Tonight is still holy time, still feast time, still the time when anything is possible, and the world is upside down, and you are, for just a moment longer, free. You walk home through snow under stars, your belly full, your heart lighter than it's been in months. Your sister skips ahead, singing one of the new carols. Your parents walk together, their hands nearly touching, their steps matched. And you think about community, about what it means, about how these 12 days have woven everyone together in a way that regular life doesn't. The shared food, the shared games, the shared laughter and song and misrule. You'll remember this. When February comes and the food runs low and the cold is still relentless and spring feels impossibly far away, you'll remember this. And it will help. It will be enough to keep you going. Because that's what the 12 days are for. Not just celebration for its own sake, but this. A store of warmth to carry you through the rest of winter. A memory of plenty in the midst of scarcity. Proof that life can be more than just surviving. That community is real. That kindness exists. That even here, even now, even at the edge of the world, in the coldest part of the year, people can find ways to be generous, to be playful, to be human. The stars wheel overhead, the snow crunches underfoot, and somewhere behind you, in the Lord's hall, the feast continues. But you're going home, to your fire, to your family, to the small warmth that's yours. And that's enough. That's everything. That's the gift that Christmas, that the 12 days have given you. The knowledge that enough is possible. That it exists.
that you've lived it, held it, been part of it. And tomorrow, when work resumes, you'll carry that knowledge with you. Into the fields, into the cold, into whatever comes next. You'll carry the warmth. The snow has started again. Small, dry flakes that hiss against the shutters. And you know what this means. The 12 days are ending. Epiphany is here. The day the wise men reached Bethlehem. The day the holy season reaches its culmination. And tomorrow, Plough Monday, when the wheel turns again and life returns to its ordinary rhythms. But tonight is 12th night, the last night, the final fire. The whole village gathers in the square, not in houses this time, not scattered among families, but together, everyone, in the cold and dark, building a fire that will be visible for miles. A beacon, a statement. We are here. We survived. We celebrated. And now we mark the end. The fire is built with ceremony. The men have been gathering wood all day, not scraps, but good timber, and they stack it high, a pyramid taller than a man. And at its heart, they place the remnants of all the Yule logs from all the houses, the pieces that have burned for 12 days and are now reduced to charred chunks still alive with embers. All of these fragments come together, and when the fire is lit, when the flames take hold and roar up into the winter night, it's as if every hearth in the village has merged into one great fire, one collective warmth. You stand in the crowd, your family around you, everyone around you, and you watch the fire grow. The heat is extraordinary, almost frightening. It pushes back the cold in a way that feels aggressive, almost violent. 10 feet from the fire and you're sweating, 20 feet and you're warm, 30 feet and you can just feel it. A promise, a reminder that warmth exists. Someone starts singing. You don't know who, don't see them in the crowd. But the song rises and others join in, and suddenly everyone is singing. That carol about holly and ivy, about the turning of the year, about death and rebirth, about endings and beginnings. And in the firelight, faces look ancient, timeless, like your people have always looked, like they'll look 100 years from now, gathered around fires, singing the same songs, marking the same passages. The Lord of Misrule, Martin, still wearing his straw crown, though it's battered now, worn thin by 3 days of play, steps forward. This is his last act. He raises his arms, and the crowd falls silent. And he speaks. The feast is ending, he says. His voice is different now. Not the joking voice of Misrule, but something more serious, more real. Tomorrow we return. To work, to worry, to the way things are. But tonight, one more time, we remember. We survived. We're here. We're together. And whatever comes, whatever winter still holds, we face it as we always have. Not alone. Never alone. Together. It's a simple speech, probably not the first time these words have been spoken on a 12th night, probably not the last. But they land anyway. You feel them in your chest, in the tightness of your throat, in the way people around you are nodding, some with tears in their eyes, all of them understanding what's being said. That tomorrow will be hard, that the rest of winter will be hard, but that this moment, this fire, this gathering has given them something to hold on to. Someone brings out a cake, the 12th cake, baked specially for this night. It's enormous, at least by village standards, made from flour that was hoarded all year for this purpose. And hidden inside, somewhere, is a dried bean. Whoever finds the bean becomes king or queen for the night, gets the last moment of glory before everything returns to normal.
The cake is broken into pieces and distributed. Everyone gets a share, no matter how small. You take yours, examine it, bite carefully. No bean. You watch as others bite, chew, check, shake their heads. And then a shout. Little Anna, barely 6 years old, holds up the bean triumphantly, and everyone cheers, and suddenly she's being lifted up, a crown of ivy placed on her head, and she's giggling and blushing and delighted. She's queen for an hour. She decrees that everyone must dance, and so you dance, holding hands in a circle around the fire, moving to a rhythm that's half remembered, half invented, feet stamping in the snow, breath steaming, bodies warming from movement and from proximity, from being part of this living chain of humans refusing to freeze, refusing to stop, refusing to surrender to winter. You dance until you're dizzy, until your sister is laughing so hard she can barely breathe, until your mother's face is flushed and young-looking in the firelight, until your father, serious your whole life, breaks into a grin and spins your mother around, and they look at each other, and you see something you weren't supposed to see. Something private, something that reminds you that they were young once, that they're still human, still capable of joy. The fire burns lower, not out, not yet, but settling into a steady burn that will last hours more. People begin to drift away, back to their houses, back to their lives. Tomorrow comes early. There's wood to cut, animals to tend, the endless work resuming. But they go slowly, reluctantly, taking their time, wanting to hold on to this moment as long as possible. Your family is one of the last to leave. Your father stays, keeping watch over the fire with a few other men, making sure it burns safely through the night. But your mother leads you and your sister home. And as you walk, she stops, turns, looks back at the fire. Remember this, she says quietly. Not to you specifically, maybe to herself, maybe to the night. Remember that we did this, that we can do this, that even when everything is hard, we find ways to celebrate, to come together, to be more than just survival. You look at her, this woman who manages scarcity like an art, who calculates rations and makes hard choices and never complains. And you see something in her face you haven't seen before. Not happiness exactly, but something deeper.
Satisfaction, maybe. Pride. The knowledge that she kept her family alive another year. That she managed to give them not just survival, but this. These 12 days. This warmth. These memories. Back at home, the house feels empty after the crowd, the noise, the fire. Your own hearth is small by comparison, the Yule log burned down to a stub that will last maybe one more day. But it's still burning, still giving heat, still doing its work. You lie down to sleep and you think about time. About how the 12 days felt infinite while you were in them, like they'd never end, like Christmas would last forever. But now they're gone, slipping away like snow in your hand. And tomorrow is Plough Monday, and everything returns to normal, and winter still has months to go. But you also think about what you've gained. The memories, yes. The food, yes. But more than that. The renewed sense that your village, these 80 people, are bound together by something stronger than obligation or proximity. That you're a community, a true one, and that this community has traditions, has ways of celebrating and enduring and marking time that are yours, that belong to you, that connect you to your grandparents and their grandparents and all the way back to people whose names are lost, but whose fires still burn in yours. Outside, the 12th night fire is a glow on the horizon, visible through the gaps in the shutters. Inside, your fire murmurs its steady song. And between them, between the great communal fire and the small family fire, you rest. Not quite asleep, not quite awake. Suspended in that space between, thinking about warmth and cold, about together and alone, about the way survival is work, and work is love, and love is what carries you through. The 12 days are over, but their warmth remains, banked like coals, ready to be blown back to life when you need them most. In February, when the food is running low, in March, when winter refuses to end, in April, when you think you can't go on. You'll remember the fire, the singing, the dancing, the sense that for 12 days you weren't just surviving. You were living. You were human. You were part of something larger than yourself. Something that might be called tradition or community, or simply the stubborn insistence of people who refuse to let the cold win. The snow keeps falling. The wind keeps blowing. But you're warm enough, fed enough, loved enough. And tomorrow, when work resumes, you'll do it with the memory of the 12th night fire in your heart, burning steady, refusing to go out. The wheel has turned. Plough Monday has come and gone. The fields, still frozen, have received their blessing. The women have returned to their spinning, the men to their tools. Christmas, that brief, bright interruption, has faded into memory, and work has resumed its ancient rhythms. But something has changed. Or maybe nothing has changed, and you're just noticing it differently now. The way the light is different, even on the coldest days. How sunrise comes a few minutes earlier each morning. Sunset a few minutes later. The days are lengthening, not by much, not enough to feel warmth yet, but enough to notice. enough to hope. You're standing outside your house in the thin winter sun, and you're thinking about survival, about what it really means here at the edge of the world in the hardest season. And you realize it's not what you thought. It's not about strength, not really. Not about being tough enough to withstand anything. It's smaller than that, more daily, more ordinary. It's about the fire you fed this morning, as you fed it every morning. The repetition of small acts that add up to staying alive. It's about your mother's hands, counting out oats, making them stretch, making do. It's about your father's shoulders, bent under loads of wood, carrying them without complaint, because that's what must be done. It's about your sister's laughter, stubborn and bright even in the cold, even when there's nothing to laugh about except the fact of still being here. It's about all of this, and it's about more. It's about the village itself, the way 20 households have woven themselves into something larger than 20 separate families. The way you share fires, share food, share the work of keeping each other alive. The way nobody survives alone. The way survival, real survival, is communal or it's nothing. You think about Christmas, about those 12 days that now feel almost dreamlike. The feasting, the games, the singing around the 12th night fire, and you understand now what they were for. Not just celebration for celebration's sake, but this. A reminder that life is more than endurance. That even in the coldest, darkest, most difficult times, humans find ways to celebrate, to come together, to be generous with what little they have. That survival without joy is just existing. And humans are built for more than that. The medieval Christmas you experienced was not the Christmas of later centuries. There were no presents, no cards, no trees decorated with baubles. But there was something else, something that's been lost in the abundance of modern holidays. The understanding that celebration is earned, that feast is meaningful, because you know famine. That light matters because you've sat in the dark. That warmth is precious because you've been cold. And perhaps that's the lesson that carries across the centuries. Not that medieval life was better, it wasn't. It was harder in ways that are difficult to imagine now, but that it understood something fundamental about human survival. That we need both the daily grind and the festival break from it. That we need tradition, ritual, the marking of time with celebration. That we need each other desperately, especially when things are hardest. Your village will make it through this winter. Most of it, anyway. Some won't. Old Martin, the one who drew the names for the Lord of Misrule, will die in February, peacefully in his sleep. Another winter, finally, too many. The widow's youngest child won't see spring. The cough that started in January worsening despite all the herbs and prayers. The losses will hurt, will be mourned, will leave holes in the community that feel
impossible to fill. But the village will continue. Spring will come, as it always does, patient and inevitable. The snow will melt, the ground will thaw, the first green shoots will push through the dark earth, and the cycle will begin again, planting and growing and harvesting and storing, all of it building toward next winter, next Christmas, next survival. And centuries from now, in the winter of 2025, people will gather for their own Christmas celebrations. They'll have more food than your village could imagine, more warmth, more comfort. They'll have decorated trees and wrapped presents and electric lights that turn night into day at the flip of a switch. And in some ways, they'll have lost what you had. The understanding that warmth is earned, that celebration is meaningful because survival is hard, that community is not optional but essential. But perhaps on the coldest nights, when they gather around their tables and their fires, both real and metaphorical, they'll feel an echo of what you felt. The sense that being together matters. That sharing food, even abundant food, is still a form of communion. That marking time with celebration, with tradition, with the deliberate pause from ordinary life, is part of what makes us human. Because the cold reveals warmth. It always has. The harsh winters of medieval times revealed the warmth of human kindness, the warmth of shared fires, the warmth of communities that refused to let each other freeze. And perhaps that's still true. Perhaps any difficulty, any hardship, any challenge reveals the same thing. That what saves us is not our individual strength, but our collective kindness. The small acts of sharing, of caring, of keeping each other warm in whatever way we can. You turn to go back inside. The sun is setting, another short winter day ending. Your mother is cooking supper, something simple, porridge probably, but it will be warm, and it will be enough. Your father is carving a new tool handle by the fire. Your sister is playing some game with stones, creating and destroying tiny worlds on the packed earth floor. This is your life. Simple, hard, ordinary. No grand adventures, no great dramas. Just the daily work of survival. The slow accumulation of days that might add up to a life. But it's yours. It's real. It's happening here, now, in this moment, in this small space of warmth carved out of the winter cold. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's everything. Perhaps the meaning of survival is simply this. You wake up, you tend the fire, you do the work, you care for your people, you celebrate when you can, you endure when you must, and you keep going, day after day, year after year, generation after generation. The work of being human, the work of staying warm, the work of refusing, always, to let the cold have the final word. The fire crackles. Your family breathes. The village settles into evening. And somewhere, across time, across distance, across all the centuries that separate medieval winter from modern winter,
The fires still burn. The families still gather. The traditions still matter.
The cold still reveals warmth, and that warmth, stubborn and bright and passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart, from one winter to the next, is what carries us through. All of us. Always. Good night. Stay warm. And may the fires you tend, whatever form they take, burn steady through all your winters.